Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Learning English often feels like hitting a wall when you try to understand native speakers talking at, well, natural speed or when you want to speak more naturally yourself.
Mhm.
And one of the most common pieces of advice you hear is, oh, just watch movies and TV shows.
It's great advice in theory, isn't it? It
Yeah.
sounds like the most fun homework imaginable. Settle in, watch your favorite series, maybe The Office again,
Right.
and just absorb English effortlessly. But for many learners, it quickly becomes clear that simply watching, even with subtitles blazing, doesn't magically make fast speech understandable.
Yeah, or build that speaking confidence either.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I've heard from so many people who spend hours binging shows, glued to the subtitles, maybe picking up the odd word here and there, but then they encounter real life rapid English,
hmm
and it's still just a frustrating blur. The words seem to kind of mush together.
Yeah, they really do.
And then their own attempts to speak feel, well, slow or unnatural compared to what they're hearing on screen.
That gap is huge.
Hmm.
That gap between understanding, say, written English or maybe slow, deliberate speech, and then processing or producing fast conversational English.
Hmm.
That's a major hurdle for so many learners.
It really is.
And passively watching, I mean, it's enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't provide the specific training needed to bridge that gap. It's kind of like trying to become a great musician just by listening to music.
Right.
You actually need to practice the instrument. You need to do the drills.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. You have this incredible resource. I mean, literally millions of hours of authentic English dialogue right there at your fingertips, but without a clear method, it's hard to tap into its full potential for serious language improvement. It
Wow.
feels like you should be learning more than you actually are, you know?
Precisely. And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We've gone through the source material you've provided, which lays out a really practical, actionable strategy. We're going to show you how to stop just watching
Okay.
and start actively using movies and TV shows as, well, powerful tools to dramatically improve both your listening comprehension of fast English
Hmm.
and your ability to speak more fluently and naturally.
So we're talking about a step-by-step guide here, turning that passive screen time into active learning time.
That's the goal. We'll cover how to pick the shows that are actually right for your current level because that's foundational. You've got to start there.
Okay.
Then we'll dive into some really concrete techniques to train your ear to process that fast connected speech, which is probably, like you said, the biggest pain point for learners.
That's right.
We'll also clarify the right way to use subtitles so they actually assist you, not hinder your progress.
That's key.
Yeah. And finally, we'll look at how you can leverage this content to actively practice and improve your own speaking.
Okay, I love this. Think of this deep dive as giving you the remote control and the instruction manual for effective English learning through entertainment. We're transforming your couch into a classroom.
But a fun one.
Exactly, a fun one, making movie night genuinely productive. So let's start at the beginning then, which is arguably the most overlooked step about choosing the right content. Is it really true that you can't just pick any old show?
That's exactly what the source material emphasizes. I mean, sure, any exposure is probably better than none at all, right?
Yeah.
But if your goal is structured improvement, like really moving the needle, picking content randomly,
Uh-huh.
especially something designed for native speakers with, say, super complex plots or really rapid-fire dialogue.
Like a legal drama or something?
Yeah, exactly, like a dense medical drama or a fast-talking political thriller. That can actually be counterproductive if it's not the right level for you.
Why is that exactly? What happens if I, say, pick something way too difficult? Like maybe I jump into the West Wing when I'm still an upper beginner.
Well, you'll likely get overwhelmed almost immediately. Just, well,
Yeah.
the vocabulary will probably be too advanced, maybe full of jargon. The sentence structures are likely going to be too complex, long, winding sentences.
Right.
And the speaking speed will just feel impossibly fast.
Mm.
You'll spend all your mental energy just trying to grasp the absolute basics, maybe, looking up every third word in the dictionary.
Pausing.
Constantly pausing. And you won't have any cognitive space left to actually learn the nuances or even enjoy it, frankly.
Yeah.
Frustration sets in really quickly, and you're likely to just give up on the whole method entirely.
Okay. Yeah. It feels like hitting that brick wall we talked about, just over and over.
Exactly. It's incredibly demotivating.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. And I imagine the opposite is also true. Then picking something too easy doesn't help much either.
Right. It's the other side of the coin. If you choose content where you understand, say, 95% or more of everything that's said.
Like a kid's show you basically know by heart.
Yeah. Or maybe a simple sitcom you've seen a dozen times. You're not really challenging yourself. You're not encountering enough new vocabulary or new grammar structures or those faster, more natural speech patterns. It's comfortable, sure,
Very comfortable.
but it's not pushing you forward in your language acquisition. Learning really happens at the edge of your current ability,
Yeah,
not comfortably nestled way inside it.
that sweet spot. So finding that sweet spot is crucial. Not so hard, it's demotivating, not so easy, it's just stagnant.
Mhm.
How does the source guide us in finding that balance based on our level?
They provide a very clear breakdown, actually. They offer specific types of content and even some concrete examples for beginner, intermediate, and advanced learners. It acts as a great starting point, a kind of map.
Okay, walk us through the recommendations for beginners. What kind of shows or movies should someone just starting out, maybe feeling a bit intimidated, look for?
Okay, so for beginners, the absolute key is clarity and simplicity. The source strongly suggests animated movies. Think about classics like Toy Story or Finding Nemo, or maybe something more recent like Frozen.
Why animated specifically?
Well, a couple of reasons. First, the voice actors are professionals. They often speak with exceptionally clear pronunciation. That's their job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Second, the dialogue is typically less complex than in, say, adult dramas. Sentences tend to be shorter, the vocabulary is often more basic, and the storylines are usually straightforward and easy to follow visually. Even if you miss a few words, the pictures tell a lot of the story.
Right, you can follow along.
Yeah. It's often designed for a younger audience, which translates well for beginner English learners who need that clear, understandable input.
That makes a lot of sense. Clear sounds, simple stories, visual support. What else works well for beginners?
Sitcoms. Specifically, sitcoms focused on everyday conversations. Shows like Friends or Modern Family are frequently cited, and for good reason.
Okay, why those? They can feel pretty fast sometimes.
They can, yes. They might involve some faster speech than animation, definitely. But the context is usually very relatable. Daily life, work, relationships, hanging out. The language is conversational. It's centered on common situations.
Stuff you might actually talk about.
Exactly. And they often use repetition, running gags, catchphrases, predictable settings like the coffee shop or the living room. This helps you pick up common phrases and reactions more easily.
So even though it's live action, the type of language and the familiar context make it more accessible for beginners.
Precisely. It's more realistic dialogue than, say, Peppa Pig, but it stays within a limited, understandable scope most of the time. And speaking of Peppa Pig, for absolute beginners, or if you find even something like Friends a bit too fast initially, the source points to shows with very short, very simple episodes. Children's programs like Peppa Pig or maybe Bluey are great examples.
Okay.
The language in these is really fundamental, basic vocabulary, simple present tense, clear questions and answers. Where are you going? I'm going to the park. Very direct.
And the episodes are short too, right?
Super short, usually 5-10 minutes, so you can rewatch them easily without a huge time commitment, which is fantastic for reinforcing those basic building blocks. Repetition is key at this stage.
Got it. So the major benefits for beginners are definitely that clear pronunciation, simple, high-frequency vocabulary, and plots that don't require complex language to understand.
Exactly. Clear, simple, and relatable. That's the beginner mantra.
Okay, so what about intermediate learners, people who are past the absolute basics but maybe still struggle with understanding faster speech or more complex phrasing?
Right. So for intermediate learners, you're ready to handle more natural flowing speech. You can start stepping it up. The source recommends TV dramas, but specifically those that focus more on character interactions and conversations rather than, say, heavily technical or jargon-filled plots.
So not necessarily Law and Order with all the legal terms, maybe.
Probably not ideal to start with, yeah.
Yeah.
Think more along the lines of shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office. U.S. version is often mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue here is much more realistic. It includes common idioms, maybe some light slang, cultural references you'd actually encounter in everyday interactions.
Okay.
The pace is definitely faster than most beginner content, but the plots are usually followable without getting totally lost in intricate details based only on the language. There's still context and character relationships to guide you.
So you're stepping up the realism and the speed of the language, but the overall context is still generally accessible. You can still follow the story.
Precisely. Light comedies also fall squarely into this intermediate category. Shows like The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother.
Ah, okay. Lots of fast banter in those sometimes.
Yeah. There is. The humor can sometimes rely on wordplay or cultural understanding, which is a good challenge. But the underlying conversations about relationships, work, daily life problems are very common and relatable. You get exposed to more varied sentence structures and a faster conversational pace compared to beginner stuff.
Yeah, I can see how shows like that would be great for picking up common phrases, reaction sounds, the little bits of everyday chat.
Absolutely. And what about reality shows? The source mentions those too for intermediates.
Really, like competition shows.
Yeah, things like MasterChef or The Great British Bake Off or Surprisingly Good, or even something like Queer Eye.
Interesting. Why?
Well, while there's obviously specific vocabulary related to the show's theme, like cooking terms in MasterChef,
Souffle, bain-marie.
exactly, but the majority of the dialogue is actually unscripted, spontaneous conversation between contestants, judges, hosts. You hear people expressing real frustration, excitement, asking genuine questions, describing things in real time, interrupting each other.
Ah, so it's authentic speech.
Very authentic. It's unrehearsed, natural speech, which is excellent training for your ear. You get to hear language as it's actually spoken, complete with pauses, hesitations, immums, ahs, restarts, all that messy stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. So the key benefit for intermediates is really that exposure to more natural flowing speech and relatable, generally understandable situations.
That's the core idea, stepping into more authentic, faster communication, but within context you can still largely follow.
Okay. So what about our advanced learners, the ones who feel pretty comfortable but really want to push their limits, maybe understand those super fast movies or really nuanced dialogue?
Right. For advanced learners, the goal is really exposure to the full spectrum of English. We're talking very fast speech, highly complex topics, a wide range of diverse accents, and really nuanced language irony, subtext, sophisticated vocabulary.
So what kind of content fits that bill?
This is where you can tackle those movies known for their rapid-fire dialogue. Think Aaron Sorkin's scripts like The Social Network or complex action films like Inception.
Oh yeah, the social network dialogue is incredibly fast.
And dense. The characters often speak very quickly, conversations are packed with information, overlapping sometimes, and they can include specialized vocabulary, tech jargon, legal terms, or really intricate sentence structures. It's a significant listening challenge. You really have to focus.
Yeah, I can imagine those movies are tough, even for some native speakers, depending on the scene. What else is good for advanced learners?
News programs and documentaries are excellent. They help expand vocabulary and understand language used in more formal or academic contexts. Something like BBC News gives you great exposure to standard British English and formal reporting style.
And documentaries.
Documentaries or things like TED Talks offer a vast range of topics presented by expert speakers. They often use sophisticated vocabulary, structured arguments, rhetorical devices. You encounter different accents, formal registers, and language specific to fields like science, technology, history, social issues. It really broadens your linguistic horizons.
Okay. And what about complex dramas? You mentioned those earlier.
Absolutely. TV dramas that are known for their sophisticated writing and intricate plots. Shows like Breaking Bad or Sherlock or maybe The Crown.
What makes them advanced?
Well, the dialogue often contains a lot of subtext. What's not being said is as important as what is. There's irony, complex character motivations revealed through language, cultural references, and sometimes specialized vocabulary related to the plot chemistry, crime investigation, politics, whatever it might be.
And accents too, maybe?
Definitely. Characters might speak with distinct regional accents or use varying degrees of formality depending on the situation. It requires a high level of linguistic and cultural comprehension to catch all the nuances.
So the benefit here for advanced learners is really pushing your limits with challenging language, encountering diverse topics and accents, and understanding that subtle, nuanced meaning.
Precisely. It's about getting comfortable with the full richness and complexity of English as it's used in demanding contexts.
Okay, so the source gives us this fantastic guide based on level beginner, intermediate, advanced with examples. But how do you really know if a specific show or movie is hitting that sweet spot for you personally? Is there like a quick test you can do?
Yes, thankfully. They offer a very practical rule of thumb. It's quite simple, actually. Watch a short clip, maybe just a minute or two, without any subtitles at all. Just listen.
Okay.
If you can understand roughly 50% to 70% of the dialogue on that first listen, just the gist, the main points, maybe some key phrases, then the content is likely a good fit for your current level.
Ah, okay, 50 to 70%. Why that specific range?
Well, think about it. If you understand less than 50%, it's probably too difficult, right? You'll be guessing way too much, constantly lost, needing to look up tons of
Should
words.
cure frustration again.
Yeah, exactly. There's not enough known language there to kind of anchor your learning. You can't build on sand. But If you understand significantly more than 70%, let's say 85% or 90% or even higher,
But it's too easy.
it's likely too easy for active learning. You're not encountering enough new challenges, whether that's new vocabulary, different grammar structures, or just that faster, more natural speed. You need that challenge to really push your learning forward effectively.
So that 50–70% zone means there's enough familiar language and context to keep you from feeling completely lost and wanting to quit.
You have an anchor.
But there are enough unknown elements, enough challenge to actually stretch your abilities and force you to learn new things.
Exactly. It's often called the zone of comprehensible input +1, or the learning zone. You're challenged just enough to acquire new language, but not so much that you're overwhelmed and demotivated. It's the perfect level for active, focused learning.
That 50–70% rule is incredibly helpful. It really takes the guesswork out of choosing. So listener, maybe right now think about a show or movie you enjoy that might fit into one of those categories we discussed: beginner, intermediate, advanced, or maybe grab one of our examples. Keep that 50–70% test in mind for next time.
It's a great tool.
Choosing the right content is fundamental, definitely. But even when you have the perfect show, the biggest challenge often remains actually understanding that fast, natural English.
Ah, yes, the bane of many learners' existence. This is that frustration point we mentioned right at the start. You know, classroom English, or maybe language specifically produced for learners on apps or websites, is often slower, more clearly enunciated.
Very deliberate.
Very deliberate. But native speakers in movies and TV shows, they just don't talk like that in casual conversation. They blend words together, they drop sounds, they use rhythm and stress in ways that aren't always obvious.
It's like a completely different animal. You learn going to in your textbook, but you hear gonna on the show. You learn want to. You hear wanna. You learn kinda. You hear kinda. And they do it all so quickly.
And it's not just those common contractions like gonna or wanna or kinda. Native speakers constantly use what linguists call connected speech. This happens totally naturally, unconsciously, when words link together in a sentence to make speech smoother and faster.
Okay, connected speech. What does that involve?
Well, several things. For instance, the end sound of one word might merge or blend into the beginning sound of the next word. A classic example is cup of tea.
Ah, cup of tea.
Exactly. The P sound at the end of cup can kind of blend into the vowel sound of and of itself, often reduces to a very weak sound, or sometimes almost disappears entirely. So cup of tea naturally becomes cup of tea.
Cup of tea. I've definitely heard that. So it's not just speaking fast, it's also how the sounds themselves literally change and connect when they're next to each other.
That's a huge part of it. Another super common pattern is when a word ending in a consonant sound is followed by a word starting with a vowel sound. That final consonant often links across and almost attaches itself to the beginning of the next word.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think of an apple. We don't usually say an apple with a gap. It sounds more like an apple, right? The N sound connects directly to the A.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Pick it up.
It flows together to sound more like pick it up. The K links to the I, the tin links to the U.
Pick it up. Okay, I hear that now.
And another interesting one is when certain sounds meet. Like when a word ending in a D sound, like did, is followed by a word starting with a J sound, like you.
Issue.
Those sounds often blend together to make a J sound. So did you go frequently sounds like did you go.
Did you go? Wow, I hear that all the time. I never really thought about it as the words literally changing how they sound based on what's next to them.
It's a completely natural linguistic phenomenon in English and many other languages too. It just makes speech flow faster and smoother for the speaker. But for learners, oh boy. If you're expecting to hear every single word pronounced distinctly, perfectly, like you might find it in a dictionary.
Like separate dictionary entries.
Yeah. Then it's incredibly difficult to decipher this rapid, connected stream of sound. Your brain is busy trying to match what it's hearing to the isolated words it knows, and they just don't match up. It's confused.
Okay, this is the core problem then. The actual sound of words changes in natural, fast speech. So the big question is, how do we train our ears to recognize these connected speech patterns and learn to process that speed? How do we tune in?
Well, the source provides a fantastic, really practical 3-step listening exercise specifically designed for this. The power of it lies in focused, repetitive work on a very short segment of speech, not trying to boil the ocean.
Okay, small chunks. I'm ready. What's step 1?
Step 1, choose a very short clip from your movie or TV show.
Yeah.
And the source is specific here. Think around 10 to 15 seconds long. That's it.
Just 10 or 15 seconds. Okay.
Yep. Listen to this tiny clip without any subtitles at all, just pure listening. Now, the purpose here isn't necessarily to understand everything right away. Don't panic if it sounds like noise. It's simply to expose your ear to the sounds at their natural speed and rhythm. Just listen passively, maybe once or twice. Try to catch any individual words or maybe short phrases that sound familiar, but don't stress at all about what you miss. It's like taking a first rough pass to see what your ear registers initially.
Okay, so just listen, let the sounds wash over me, see what little bits stick out, no pressure. Got it. What's step 2?
Step 2 is where the analysis happens. Listen to that exact same 10 to 15 second clip again, maybe a couple more times, but this time, watch with English subtitles turned on.
Ah, okay. So now I connect the sound to the text.
Exactly. Now you can check what you thought you heard or what you missed entirely in step 1 against the actual words being spoken.
So this is where I see the words that sounded like complete mush before and go, oh, that's what they were saying.
Precisely. And this is where that crucial aha moment happens regarding connected speech. As you read the words on the screen and simultaneously listen very carefully, you start noticing how the sounds you heard, that blur of rapid noise, correspond to the written text.
Wait.
And specifically, you start noticing how those words are linked together or how their individual sounds change in context. You see the words, "What do you want to do tonight?" written out clearly. While at the same time, you're hearing something that sounds much more like, "What do you want to do tonight?"
Right, and that connects the dots in your brain, doesn't it? Between the formal written form you learned and the actual casual spoken form you hear.
That's exactly the goal. You're actively observing those reductions for want to, those linking patterns. What do you see going to and you hear gonna. You see did you and you hear did you. You see kinda and you hear kinda. This step is all about building conscious awareness of how native speakers naturally distort or blend sounds when they speak quickly.
So you're training your brain to recognize these transformations.
Yes, you might even want to pause the video during this step, rewind just a second or two, and listen specifically to how two tricky words blend together, really focusing on that transition sound.
That feels really targeted. So you're not just passively reading the subtitles. You're actively using the text as a guide to understand how the sound is being formed in fast speech, analyzing the audio with the text as a key.
That's the absolute key takeaway for step 2. You're using the subtitles to analyze the sound of the language, not just the meaning. Then comes step 3.
Okay, so step 3 must be listen again, but this time without the subtitles. Back to just listening.
You got it.
Yeah.
Listen to that same short clip for a third time, or maybe fourth or fifth. Repetition is good.
Okay.
Now with the subtitles turned off again. The goal here is to test your ear. Can you now recognize those words and phrases, including the connected speech patterns you just analyzed purely by listening?
So can I hear what I wanna now without needing to read it?
Exactly. Can you process that connected sound directly?
Okay. So you get the raw sound initially, then you analyze that sound using the text as a guide, and then you test if your ear can now recognize the analyzed sound on its own without the visual aid.
That's the cycle, perfectly. And the source really emphasizes that you should repeat this entire cycle, listen without, listen with, listen without, again for the same short clip, until you feel you can understand most or all of the sentence purely from listening. This focused, intensive, repetitive practice on these tiny segments is incredibly effective. It really tunes your ear to the subtle nuances of rapid, connected English speech over time.
It might feel a little tedious at first, maybe focusing on just 10 or 15 seconds over and over.
It can, yeah.
But I can totally see how doing that intensive work on a small piece would build the foundational skill you need to handle longer stretches of speech later on.
It's exactly like lifting small weights repeatedly to build muscle before you try and tackle the really heavy ones. Regular practice with this 3-step method, even if it's just for, say, 10-15 minutes a day using a few different clips, can dramatically improve your listening comprehension of natural, fast English. It starts turning that blur of sound into something genuinely decipherable.
That makes me feel much more hopeful about tackling fast speech. Okay, so we now know how to choose the right content using that 50-70% rule, and we have this powerful 3-step exercise to specifically train our ears for speed and connected speech. That brings us logically to subtitles themselves. We've already touched on using English subtitles strategically in step 2 of the listening exercise, but how should we think about using subtitles more broadly? Because I know so many learners just keep their native language subtitles on all the time.
Oh, yeah. And that, according to the source material, is the major pitfall to avoid if your goal is improving your English listening.
Why is it so bad? It helps you understand the story, Eric.
It absolutely helps you understand the story and follow the plot, no question. If the English is way too hard or you just want to relax and enjoy, native language subtitles are fine for that. But they almost completely bypass the English listening practice. Your brain, it's wired to take the path of least resistance.
Makes sense.
And reading comfortably in your native language is much, much easier than actively decoding fast-spoken English. So what happens is you end up just reading a translation of the dialogue,
And barely listening to the English audio at all.
pretty much. Your focus shifts entirely to the text in your own language. So they're great for comprehension of the plot, but terrible for improving your ability to actually understand spoken English.
Okay. So native language subtitles are generally a no for active listening practice. What about English subtitles? We use them in the exercise, but can they also become a crutch if you overuse them?
They absolutely can. If you always watch everything with English subtitles turned on, you might fall into a similar trap. You might just end up reading the English text scrolling across the bottom of the screen.
Instead of truly listening to and processing the spoken English audio.
Exactly. Your brain might still default to reading because it's often easier, especially if the speech is fast or unclear. You get good at speed reading English, maybe, but not necessarily better at understanding it by ear alone.
Okay, so subtitles aren't inherently bad, but we need to use them strategically. What's the right way then, according to the source, to use subtitles as an active tool for learning, not just a crutch?
The source outlines a really effective method that leverages English subtitles, but in a structured way. Step 1. Watch a section of the show, or maybe a longer scene this time, with the English subtitles turned on first.
Okay, so start with the support. This sounds similar to step 2 of our intensive listening exercise.
It is, yeah, and for very similar reasons. Watching with English subtitles first helps you clearly see that connection between the written word and the actual spoken sound. You see how a word is spelled while simultaneously hearing its natural pronunciation in the context of a sentence.
Which is vital for associating the visual form with the auditory form, especially with all that connected speech stuff we talked about.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned before, it also helps you learn new vocabulary effectively, right? You see a new word pop up, you read it, you hear it used naturally in context, and you can easily pause to look it up if you need to, understanding its meaning within the flow of the conversation.
Yeah, much better than just memorizing word lists.
Way better.
Yeah.
So this first step is all about building a strong link between the auditory input and the visual forms of the language in understanding the content.
Got it. Watch with English subs first. And then step 2.
Step 2. Go back and watch the exact same section or scene again. But this time, crucially, turn the English subtitles off.
Ah, okay. Take the training wheels off.
Exactly. Now that you've already seen the script, you understand the context, you know what's generally being said, thanks to step 1, your brain has a kind of blueprint. The second viewing forces your ear and your brain to rely solely on processing the spoken English without that safety net of reading along.
So it's focused, pure listening practice now.
Pure listening practice. You're actively trying to recognize the sounds, the words, the phrases that you just saw written down moments before.
This really does sound like it builds on the intensive listening exercise method, but applying it more broadly to a whole scene or section of a show.
It does, exactly. It's about progressively moving from supported listening, where you have the text, to unsupported listening, where you don't. It builds your ear's independence and confidence. And then the source adds a third step to this subtitle strategy, which brings in an active production element, shadowing.
Shadowing again. Okay, we touched on this briefly. What does that involve in this context after watching with and without subtitles?
So after you've watched the scene without subtitles, step 2, you can go back through it again, maybe pausing after each sentence or short phrase this time. And as you pause, you actively try to repeat that sentence or phrase out loud.
Just repeat it.
Well, not just repeat it, but try to imitate the speaker as closely as possible. Copy their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation, the melody of the sentence.
So I'm not just listening passively anymore. I'm trying to produce the sounds myself, using the character from the show as my direct model.
Exactly. You're trying to capture the way they link words together, where they put the stress in the sentence, maybe even their tone of voice, were they asking a question, were they being sarcastic, happy, sad. You try to mimic the whole package.
Okay, let's try a quick, simple example right now for the listener. Imagine a character just delivered this line. Listen carefully. Then pause the audio in your mind and try to repeat it out loud, copying the sound and the rhythm. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Short pause implied for listener practice.
Good. That simple act of trying to physically reproduce the sounds you just heard does something really important. It reinforces the connection between the auditory input, what you heard, and your own spoken output, what you said.
How does that help?
It helps you actually feel how your mouth, your tongue, your vocal cords need to move to make those specific English sounds and rhythms. You're building muscle memory for English pronunciation, just like practicing scales on a piano builds finger dexterity.
Ah, muscle memory for speaking. I like that.
It's key. So this three-step method for using subtitles: watch with English subtitles first, then watch the same part again without subtitles, and then go back and shadow key phrases creates this powerful learning loop. It connects listening, strategic reading, and speaking practice together, making subtitles an active learning tool, not just a passive aid or a crutch.
It really is a world away from just passively reading subtitles in your own language, isn't it?
Absolutely. You're engaging with the English audio and text in multiple active ways.
Okay, this is fantastic. We've covered choosing the right show using the 50-70% rule. We've got the intensive three-step method for training our listening for speed and connected speech. And now we have a strategic way to use English subtitles effectively, including shadowing. But let's talk more about speaking. How does simply watching stuff really help you improve your own speaking skills? It still feels mostly like a passive activity, right? Well, speaking is obviously very active.
That's a completely valid question, and you're right. Watching videos fundamentally isn't a substitute for real, interactive conversation practice with another human being. Let's be clear about that.
Okay.
However, the source material highlights how you can definitely extract valuable speaking practice from movies and TV shows using specific techniques that build directly on what we've just discussed, especially shadowing.
Okay, tell me more. What are these specific speaking exercises we can pull from watching?
Well, the first one is shadowing again, but we can think about a slightly different variation or focus this time, specifically aimed at improving your fluency and accent by mimicking native speakers more intensely.
Okay, so how is this different from the shadowing we just talked about after the subtitle steps?
The version we just discussed was more about pausing and repeating to nail the pronunciation of a specific phrase you just worked on. This variation is often called simultaneous shadowing.
Simultaneous,
Yeah.
meaning at the same time.
Yes. It involves choosing a short sentence, or maybe even a slightly longer clip, this time, say, 10-15 seconds again, and attempting to speak at the exact same time as the character is saying their lines on screen.
Whoa, wait. Speaking simultaneously with the actor, that sounds incredibly difficult. How can you possibly keep up?
It is challenging, definitely. Don't expect perfection, especially at first. You'll probably stumble, get tongue-tied, fall behind. That's totally normal. The goal isn't perfect reproduction right away.
So what is the goal then?
The goal is to try to match the character's speed, their rhythm, their intonation, their pronunciation in real time. You're literally trying to overlay your voice onto theirs, maybe following just microseconds behind their lead. It's like trying to sing along perfectly in sync with a song you know well.
Okay. What does that intense mimicry actually do for your speaking ability?
It's an incredibly powerful way to force your mouth, your tongue, your whole vocal apparatus to work in sync with the natural flow and rhythm of spoken English. You're building that crucial muscle memory for the sounds, the stress patterns, the linking patterns that native speakers use effortlessly, unconsciously.
So it's like physical training for your mouth, getting it used to the speed and the shapes required for English?
Exactly. Think of it like a musician practicing scales or arpeggios at increasing speed. It builds dexterity, precision, and fluidity. By constantly trying to keep up with a native speaker model, you're training your mouth to move faster and more efficiently to produce English sounds in natural sequences. It directly impacts your pronunciation, helps reduce hesitation, smooth out your delivery. It really improves fluency.
Wow. So it's not just cognitive learning, it's actual physical practice for speech production. Okay, that's one technique. What's the other effective speaking exercise the source mentions?
The other one is role play.
Okay, role play. This sounds a bit more interactive, maybe even if you're just by yourself at the TV.
It is. It feels more like performing. For this, you pick a short conversation scene, maybe between 2 or 3 characters. Watch it through once to understand who says what, then watch it again, but this time pause the video after each line of dialogue.
Okay.
And you choose one character, and you say their lines out loud as if you were that character in the conversation.
So I'm basically having a conversation with the screen. I say my line, then I unpause, listen to the other character's line, pause again, say my next line.
Essentially, yes. You're taking on a specific character's role in the dialogue. The key benefit here, compared to just shadowing isolated sentences, is that you're practicing speaking lines in context. You're not just saying random sentences. You're responding appropriately within a structured conversation.
And should I try to sound exactly like the character when I do this?
That's the idea. The source strongly suggests trying to match not just the words, but also the character's tone, their emotion, and their speed. Ask yourself, were they asking a question with that rising intonation at the end? Were they delivering bad news with a serious, somber tone? Were they speaking really excitedly and quickly? Try to inject that same feeling, that same intent into your voice when you deliver their line.
Ah, so this helps you practice the expressiveness of English, not just saying the correct words and grammar, like the music of the language.
Absolutely. It moves you beyond just focusing on accurate grammar and vocabulary, which are important, of course, and gets you practicing how meaning, emotion, and nuance are actually conveyed through intonation, stress patterns, pace, and tone in a realistic conversational exchange. It builds confidence in delivering lines naturally and expressively, just as you would need to in a real conversation. You're practicing performing the language, not just reciting it.
Okay, let's try a quick role-play shadowing example of that. Imagine a friend you haven't seen in ages suddenly bumps into you on the street. Listener, listen to this common friendly greeting. Pay attention to the warm tone, the slight surprise, the rhythm. Then try to say it immediately after, copying that friendly sound and flow. Hey, long time no see. Short pause implied for listener practice.
Nice. See how saying it with that intended emotion feels different than just reading it flatly? Practicing these two techniques, simultaneous shadowing for building fluency and accent muscle memory, and role play for practicing confident, expressive delivery in context, provides a really powerful way to turn your passive viewing time into active speaking practice.
It bridges that gap, doesn't it, between understanding the English you hear and being able to actually produce similar sounding language yourself, using those native speakers on screen as your direct models.
It absolutely does. It really shifts the perspective, like you said earlier. Movies and TV shows aren't just something you passively consume. They become your script library, your sound archive, and basically a cast of thousands of native speaker tutors available 24/7.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about engaging with the content actively with a specific learning goal in mind for each viewing session or each little clip practice.
Exactly. Purposeful practice.
Wow, okay. We have covered a tremendous amount today, seriously, from maybe feeling overwhelmed by fast English or hesitant about your own speaking. Hopefully you, the listener, now have a much clearer roadmap, a practical strategy to harness the power of movies and TV shows for real improvement.
Absolutely. We've hopefully transformed that vague advice of just watch shows into a much more structured, effective learning methodology, all based on the insights from our source material. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
Right. Just to quickly recap the key steps we walked through. First, we hammered home the critical importance of choosing the right content for your specific level. Remember that 50-70% rule?
Mhm. For beginners, think clarity and simplicity. Animated movies like Toy Story, or Finding Nemo, everyday sitcoms like Friends, or very short, simple shows like Peppa Pig.
For intermediate learners, you're stepping up to more natural conversations. Look at dramas like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, light comedies like The Big Bang Theory, or even authentic, unscripted speech in reality shows like MasterChef.
And for advanced learners, it's time to challenge yourself. Tackle rapid dialogue in movies like Inception or The Social Network, explore complex topics in news or documentaries like TED Talks, or dive into the nuanced language of sophisticated dramas like Sherlock or Breaking Bad.
Okay, that was choosing content. Second, we tackled the big one, understanding fast English. We broke down that specific three-step listening exercise, remember?
Yep. Step 1, listen to a short clip without subtitles first, just get the raw sound. Step 2, listen again with English subtitles, actively analyzing how words link and sounds change. Remember, what I wanna versus what do wanna do.
Right. That analysis part is key.
Step 3, listen again without subtitles to test your improved recognition purely by ear, and repeat that cycle for the same short clip until it clicks.
Perfect. Third, we clarified how to use English subtitles correctly as an active tool, not a passive crutch.
That's right. The method was, watch a section with English subtitles, first to connect sound and text and learn new words in context. Then watch the same section again without subtitles for pure, focused listening practice. And finally, use shadowing, pausing, and repeating to actively copy the pronunciation and rhythm you heard.
And fourth, we explored how to actively improve your speaking skills using this content. two main techniques there.
First was simultaneous shadowing, trying to speak at the same time as the character to build that crucial muscle memory for fluency, speed, and natural rhythm.
And the second was role play, pausing after each line in a scene and delivering one character's part yourself, focusing on matching their tone, emotion, and speed to practice expressive, contextualized speaking.
Exactly, putting it all together.
These aren't just vague tips. They're really concrete, actionable techniques that when you practice them consistently can make a massive difference in both your listening and your speaking. Watching becomes less about just passive entertainment.
And much more about active skill building, which can still be entertaining.
Absolutely. It empowers you, the learner, to take control of your progress using content you probably already enjoy and have easy access to.
It puts you in the driver's seat.
All right, now for your challenge for today. This is where you put these techniques into practice, maybe right after this deep dive or the very next time you sit down to watch something in English.
Okay, based on everything we've discussed, here's a simple, focused challenge drawing from the source material's suggestions.
Step 1, choose a short clip. Again, maybe just 10 to 15 seconds is ideal. It could be a funny line you liked, a character introduction, maybe a bit of dialogue you found interesting or even slightly confusing.
Step 2. Apply our core intensive listening exercise to that clip. Listen to it 3 times. First, completely without subtitles. Second, with the English subtitles turned on. And really pay close attention here to how the spoken words might sound different or link together compared to how they're written on screen. Notice those connections.
Okay.
And third, listen again without subtitles. See how much more you can understand the third time around just by listening now that you've done that analysis.
And step 3?
Step 3, pick just one sentence from that 10-15 second clip, just one that stands out to you. And use the shadowing technique. You can either pause and repeat it carefully, focusing on pronunciation, or if you feel brave, try that simultaneous shadowing and attempt to say it exactly like the character did, focusing on matching their pronunciation and the natural flow or rhythm.
Just those 3 steps with one tiny clip.
That's it, a small, manageable task. And, we would absolutely love to hear about how it goes for you. What movie or TV show clip did you choose for your challenge?
Yeah. And as you went through those 3 steps, what felt like the most challenging part? Was it the initial listening without any support? Was it noticing the connected speech details when the subtitles were on? Or was it the active practice of trying to shadow the sentence yourself?
And maybe, did this focused attention on just a tiny clip help you notice any new words or interesting phrases, or maybe specific pronunciation details that you hadn't really picked up on before when just watching normally?
Seriously, share your experience with us. Let us know what show you picked, what sentence you shadowed, and how practicing these techniques felt. We're curious.
Definitely. Now, thinking ahead, now that you have a powerful structured method for using visual media, like movies and TV, to improve your general listening and speaking, let's look ahead to our next deep dive.
Okay.
While movies and TV are fantastic for understanding general conversation, there's another specific communication context that many, many English learners find particularly daunting.
Let me guess. Phone calls.
You got it. Phone calls.
Oh, phone calls are tough. It really is like listening practice on hard mode, isn't it? You lose all the visual context. You can't see their facial expressions, their gestures. You can't even see the other person's mouth, moving all those little cues that actually help quite a bit with understanding in person or even when watching characters on screen.
Exactly. You are relying 100% on auditory cues and clear verbal communication.
Yeah.
It's pure sound, which means misunderstandings are potentially more likely. And knowing how to navigate those situations gracefully, how to ask for clarification politely, how to manage the conversation flow without visual aids, that's a very specific skill set.
So our next deep dive is going to tackle that challenge head on. Give us some tools for the phone.
It will. Based on the source material for that topic, we'll provide clear strategies and really useful language to make phone calls in English feel much less stressful and become much more effective for you.
What kind of stuff will we cover?
We'll teach you how to initiate calls smoothly, how to end them politely and naturally. We'll cover key phrases for common tasks like scheduling appointments over the phone or asking for specific information. And importantly, we'll give you practical tips and phrases for what to do when you inevitably don't understand something, or when you need someone to repeat themselves or speak more slowly on the phone. Handling those breakdowns.
Okay, that sounds incredibly useful. It's such a practical, essential skill for so many real-world situations: work, travel, daily life. You won't want to miss that one. Make sure you're following along or subscribe so you catch our next deep dive, which we're calling How to Handle Phone Calls in English.
Definitely tune in for that. And as we wrap up today's deep dive, just remember the core takeaway. Learning English doesn't have to be confined only to textbooks and grammar exercises. It can be enjoyable. With the right approach, the right mindset, even your entertainment time watching movies and shows can become highly productive, targeted learning time. You now have the tools, the techniques, to turn that passive watching into active, focused practice that directly addresses those specific challenges of understanding fast speech and speaking more naturally yourself.
So grab that remote, maybe apply that 50–70% rule to choose your next show or movie strategically, and start applying some of these techniques today, maybe starting with that challenge task. Your favorite characters are ready and waiting to become your new language tutors.
See you all for the next deep dive on phone calls. And until then, keep watching, keep listening, keep practicing, and really enjoy the journey of becoming a more confident English speaker and listener.